I'm going to call the Town Council work session to order. Mr. Waltz, I believe you have a report on the 522 corridor water reliability study.
Yes, sir. We do have CHA here to present the PER. Robin, would you like to introduce her?
Yes. Yes, sir. Well, this is Steve Steele with CHA to do the presentation, kind of go through the next few steps, what needs to be done, kind of cover everything.
Yes.
Thanks again, council members, for having me back. Some of you have seen me probably more than you would like to, others maybe for the first time. So I want to go over, I'm going to make it very brief, the history, get to what we're recommending, talk about how it can be paid for, and then recommend from a consulting and scheduling standpoint what I think should be the next step by the town to achieve the schedule and the outcome that we've been talking about for quite some time. So I started the cover page. This is the official letter from the Virginia Department of Health acknowledging that the report that I'm getting ready to present has been fully approved by their office, which in the grand scheme of things means that from a health department standpoint, hydraulically, from a health permitting standpoint, all of the things outlined in the Virginia code for water delivery to customers has been fully satisfied by the preliminary engineering report. So we talked about how your pump stations would be impacted, showed that you had enough effective storage in your existing tanks, how the additional water line would impact hydraulics, fire flow, residual pressure, showed that your system would only be made more robust by the improvements that we've shown in the PER. So here's the quick history. The 2011 contract with Dominion Power signed, which started this whole process of creating more redundancy and robust water delivery to their facility. There was a 2013 study done that recommended a much longer loop to make this happen. In 2014, rates came into effect that helped pay for the Guard Hill Pump Station upgrades, which was the initial stage of the agreement between Front Royal and Dominion Power. 2017, we revisited the alignments, and then in 2019, we went into a much greater level of detail to look at constructability, permitting. Getting under the river was a big one. Mr. T-Walt, rightly so, was concerned based on his previous experience on making sure that we had dotted all our T's, all of our I's, and crossed all our T's. So at the conclusion of the feasibility study, council approved CHA moving forward with a full-blown preliminary engineering report, which is a 80-page document that has everything from exhibits to fully detailed estimates, the detail of how we're going to get under the river and the method to be used, our initial environmental investigation showing that we would not have any negative impacts in that arena. I believe the council has been presented that document for your reading pleasure. It's a reader now, so get into it on a nice rainy day and enjoy. But and we've recommended how to pay for it and how that would impact the ratepayers in the county. So out of the PER, our recommendation is the electric utility route and the addition of what we're going to call Section 2, which would create the full looping, utilizing some of the existing piping in the town system. The cost for the electric utility route is $9.8 million. Section 2, another $2 million. Total project cost $11.8 million. And so I would take this minute to say that the last time I was here, I told you it was going to be $12 million. So I've knocked $200,000 off of it. Big deal.
I think up to 12 million.
Right. But if I would have missed that, and now I have to come back and tell you guys that it's another 2, that's not good. So this just shows that all of the work we've done, I haven't been surprised. I'm very confident in the existing bidding climate, bid tabulations that we've used for projects just like this from contractors. And we've got a little bit of cushion built into this for to make sure we don't get caught off guard. So it's going to be hard for everybody to see this, but this is the existing system. And you can see all of these options were evaluated. So this further outside loop, very expensive. We have one a little bit closer in, also expensive. We had a couple that were, I shouldn't touch it. This is the one that we had originally looked at, and as you can see, just looking at it, does that look like a redundant water line? No, it's right beside everything else you already have. So in the event that there's a catastrophic failure here, there's a crash on the bridge. Long and the short, this is the alignment, the cyan line, in addition to the red sections that you see. So overall, we've achieved the goal that the town agreed to. I've supplied this PER to the Dominion folks because they, in the agreement, they reserve the right to review and make sure that they agree that this would actually satisfy the redundant water line requirement. And Ray Summerfield with Dominion has agreed that this would satisfy that alignment, or satisfy that requirement to provide redundancy.
Did you get that in writing?
I was just gonna ask.
Yes, I've got that in an email, but if the attorney would like me to, or turn that over at this point to somebody that wants to do something a little more robust, by way, you would know that agreement much better than I as far as legal. It says they reserve the right to
Shoot it
review.
me at some point, but an email probably would satisfy it.
Okay. I assume that he runs the plant, so he should have
I'll
the,
probably do it, but.
okay, all right. So, pump station, we're gonna have to have a pump station, and property acquisition for something like that is usually something that is of concern. I just wanted to highlight the fact that we are going to be placing this on the existing wastewater treatment plant property so that we'll be able to utilize existing town property. It's in a key location for existing staff to be able to operate and maintain without having to take trips out in the middle of nowhere to a very remote site. Security will be less of an issue. Power that has already been provided to that site will easily be utilized, and constructability because the site's already graded. So,
Steve,
yes, sir.
Doug, in regards to that, would we be liable if we put a pumping station on the land that is currently the wastewater treatment under our agreement with the revolving fund where we have all our finances, or would that be an issue?
Would we be liable? What do you mean, would we be liable?
Well, I mean, we have, what, $40 million out on a loan? Does that, is there anything that would cause us not to be able to utilize the property where he's talking about there on the town wastewater treatment facility because of that loan?
I'd have to look at it, but we may need to get some permission, but I think we could probably.
Well, the reason I ask it, when we bought the Dawson farm and put that there originally, we had restrictions on it because of being a farm, came through the Farmers Home Administration and all the other ramifications of feds. Just want to make sure that we have the right to utilize that land at this point, if this is the way we decide to go with it.
Yeah, we may have to get some permission, but we could probably work through that.
And we would be looking at all of the parity requirements with other loan holders if and when council decided to look into financing the project. Anyway, that would be part of it.
One more question.
Yes, sir.
When you go across the railroad track there, is there going to be a board?
Yes.
Okay, and we all haven't contacted the railroad yet?
We contacted the railroad and about 10 other regulatory agencies, and we got no initial comments back. Now, the full-blown joint permit application, railroad crossing, etc., would be the initial phase of the engineering and design, which has not been approved to move forward with by council at this time. So I think the initial feasibility I did and brought back, we made sure that we had made initial contact with each of those agencies to give it a sanity check and make sure that we weren't going to get caught off guard with anything out of the ordinary. So the Route 522 corridor water PER, I have pretty vague numbers, rough ranges. This is the detailed cost estimate for each section. So the long stretch of utility water main route, you see everything from bonds, mobilization insurance, contingency, legal, bond counsel, basic engineering, geotechnical investigation, easement acquisition. Now I'm down in the weeds telling the town exactly what they're going to need to make the project happen. This table is for the section 2 segments A and B that would be closer to the fairgrounds tank area, that would utilize existing line so that we ultimately have a full redundant loop in the 522 corridor. And this is just a breakdown. $11.8 million project cost, $1.3 million in design, easements, permitting, and geotech. And if the town chose to sub it out, $288,000 to inspect the work during the project construction phase of the work. So I'm going to touch on this again just to try to make sure everybody understands the thought process of how this project can be paid for. So $11.8 million project cost. The agreement with Dominion includes up to $3.5 million from them, not including the additional revenue that will be generated from 2 rate increases that are already set in stone for Dominion. It'll happen next year and then 4 years after. Annual payment on $11.3 million VRA loan is $653,000. So the reason that this 11.3 is not 11.8 is because during construction, Dominion pays up to a certain percentage of each invoice during construction as part of the agreement. So they'll have a $500,000 influx of money during construction that you won't have to borrow, because that's written into the agreement as the way that they pay back for a piece of the money. So in the end of this year, rate goes to 1.5 times in-town rates, which will generate an additional $275,000 in annual revenue at current usage. And I do not want to get wrapped around the axle on this, but the current usage that we are using is the past 12 months, which includes the reduction that they achieved by doing recirculation and capturing condensate. So
The full time?
yes. So I have used the most conservative number that Dominion has had over the past 5 years in water usage. If it goes up, the revenue only gets better. So can I stand here and promise that Dominion won't decide that they want to invest in something and quit making $1 million a day? No guarantee on that. But it's pretty lucrative right now, and it's going to be tough for them not to keep doing what they're doing for quite some time.
So you're saying the risk is if they stop using as much water for some reason, technology change, whatever, then that throws these calculations
Correct.
out of whack.
Yes.
Obviously, if they increase, it's better for us. Stop using.
That's right.
All right. Do they have they indicated any future plans for water reduction or water conservation?
They
efforts?
their plan is to expand. The amount of water that the town had to agree that they could guarantee to provide to them is double what they're getting right now. So the town has already had to invest a large amount of money in their infrastructure and their water treatment plant's ability to convey water, but because if they came tomorrow and said, we want twice the water that we're using right now, the town would need to produce that immediately. So that's sitting there ready. And so, the cost of that is you've had to invest in the capital, but you haven't been able to capture that. But every time they use more water, the revenue required, or the revenue that you're going to generate, only gets greater than what you need to pay the project back. I know council had a lot of questions about that, so I sharpened my pencil and made sure we use the most conservative number that we've had from Dominion's usage. In 2024, if it's a 5-year gap, another rate increase to a total of $550,000 in additional annual revenue. So this is kind of a calculations to show how throughout the life of a 40 or 30-year loan from VRA, if that's the tract that the town decides at 4%, that with the money that is already in this project and what is in your annual budget now, which is $103,500, because you knew the project was coming, and BJ said that you guys said, well, let's start putting something in there. So if that 103,500 continues to go in through 2027 with the 275 additional and the 550 through that same timeline, you will have built enough revenue surplus in that budget to stop putting your 103 in and let it draw down for the remainder of the life of the loan, and still have $90,000 remaining in that budget. If you keep putting the 103,500 in there, then you have over $1 million left at the end of the project, and you've paid the debt off. So I've done this for 25 years, and I usually have to really make a good sale because we're raising rates for the ratepayers. This is not that way. So tremendous opportunity to leverage the relationship that you've got with Dominion to go to a $12 million project with what appears now to be zero impact to the ratepayers.
So let's go over that again.
Okay.
So, town council's been taking $103,500 of Dominion's current, is that Dominion's?
No, that's town.
It's just it's in our water revenue.
Okay, so you've been setting that aside for this allocation, is that right? Then on top of it, we have $275,000 of new revenue for the first 5 years.
Correct.
From Dominion.
Yes.
And
due to the rate increase, your revenue.
for the rate increase.
For Dominion.
And then $653,480 is the cost of the bond
Correct.
or the financing,
Yes.
and that's at 4%, 30 years.
Correct.
So that leaves a delta of what? So that's the 425. What's that number? What's 425,020? Second to the last column.
425, 20. So this is the payout from the first, I guess, through 2026. You're going to have a huge surplus as well, because these four 700,000s make up the 3.5 million that Dominion has to come up with, that has nothing to do with the 275,000 or the 550. So that revenue is going to be generated based on rate increase. Right out of the gate, their part of upfront is $3.5 million. So between these three $700,000 payouts and what they paid during construction, they will have front-loaded you with $3.5 million that has nothing to do with what they paid because of the rate increase. So their agreement says we are going to come up with $3.5 million, and we're going to pay up to a certain percentage during construction, and then whatever's left, we're going to divide by 4, and in the next 4 consecutive years, you get the balance to equal the full $3.5 million. That's a whole separate piece of the agreement. Then, on top of that, in the background, they've got the whole rate increase thing happening as well that has nothing to do with that 3.5.
I got that, yeah. You guys understand that?
Yeah.
Okay, so the 3.5 million, where's that factored in here?
Four installments of 7.
Right here.
I got it, okay.
Is that a sure thing at that date timeline?
Yes.
So the only thing that's a variable in here to me is
Usage.
the usage. And
Dominion's not stupid.
Right.
You know, they're gonna know
Yeah.
that this is going up, and so that's the risk. But I mean, the alternative is funding this completely yourself
Right.
at some point to build a redundancy.
Well, we got
line.
we owe the customers, we have a responsibility to have
Right.
a redundant line regardless.
Right, right.
Yeah,
So
we just have this asset, this benefit of Dominion, not
So-
only their upfront capital.
best
but-
case, this pays for itself. Worst case, the usage changes, and we're gonna have to come to the table with some money to do what we're already gonna have to do anyways.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Okay.
Steve, is it legal for them to be able to drill wells out there to get water? I know that we have an issue before with another customer.
You say they, is that Dominion? I'll have to defer to the attorney, but I believe that there's somewhere in there that they have to solely purchase from the town. But
I thought they did too, but I'll have to.
I think that's-
It's supposed to be, I just wanna make sure that.
I think it's worth revisiting, but I'm fairly
Yeah.
certain that the only way that this worked is if they agreed that there would be
No
no
wells.
well or purchasing from the county if they would ever decide they were gonna try to provide water to that area.
Well, this is no surprise to Dominion. Right? Their financing is no surprise.
Yeah, they set this up.
So they said, I mean, I have no reason to believe they're not gonna be good customers in this
And
process.
because they're
They're good
smart,
partners.
and they did the math, they probably would have liked to have tried to negotiate a one lump sum payout and relieve them of the 2 rate increase, because that works out better for them. This $550,000 is in perpetuity. It never goes away. So they would probably did the math and said, look, let's just give them the full $12 million, because in 10 years, it pays for itself.
Yeah, right.
And now we're still paying in-town rate. So
Unless in
this,
15 or 20 years they figure out a way to utilize a lot less water to accomplish what they need
That's
to
right.
accomplish.
that's right. But we can keep an eye on that.
Yeah.
And as long as, with all the CIP planning that we've done with Mike and Robbie, the town is not without ways to generate some revenue without it negatively impacting the ratepayers. So this is as good as I can do to set it up without the town having to pay for something that.
I think it's absolutely great. I don't want to sound like I'm
Right.
disbelieving in it. I'm
No.
saying that we got to do it no matter what. If we get it
Right.
for free, that's awesome. But the risk is that they're incentivized to change usage if they want to save money.
That's right.
Okay, what's the next slide?
All right. The last slide.
It's my favorite slide.
Get it done.
So engineering report approval, check, done. Next steps. The town needs to advertise for engineering to design this project. As much as I've been involved with it, I'd love to roll right on. Virginia procurement guidelines do not let you spend this amount of money without going out into the great world of engineering to see who else might be able to do a better job than I can. So I would like to get the authorization to work with Alyssa Scott to immediately develop procurement language to get the process started so that staff can begin collecting proposals from qualified engineering firms. They'll pour through those. I don't know if they'll do interviews. They probably will. But once that happens, I'm obviously going to step back. But to keep the town on track, that is not a fast process, and so it needs to the wheels need to get turning on that almost immediately. I don't know if council needs to get that far in the weeds, but it is the next step in the process, and application for funding.
It's already passed. That was due in August.
Well, if it's VRA funding that is going to go in a February bond
February,
issuance,
yeah, the February is the next deadline.
then there's still some things that need to get turned on that, and
Yeah.
if council needs to make decisions on that and whatnot. So I think maybe, and also evaluating if there's anything else other than VRA that council would like to entertain.
I would like to entertain that. I have a hard time believing, I don't understand this VRA funding. Explain that to me again. Where are they getting their funding?
It's pooled financing for localities, so all the localities go together and issue bonds together. They're issuing revenue bonds, not general obligation bonds, but revenue bonds. So it's a bunch of localities that go together, and they're helping absorb the cost for the issuing of the bonds as a whole. So it's being broken down between several other localities. So that's why an application has to be made for your amounts, and then VRA puts them all together and then divvies up the expense amongst all the localities. So that's why it's cheaper.
And it's very popular for governmental agencies like school systems and others to use that to diversify their stock because it is strong and it's guaranteed by the revenue generated by the municipalities that issued the bond. So the risk of that not ever being strong is very little because it's backed by revenue that has to be generated to pay for services that are provided by each municipality.
Would this project qualify for a general obligation bond?
Possibly.
We'd have to do a referendum?
If it was general obligation, would have to be referendum. But
What kind of term, what difference in terms and rates do you think there'd be?
I don't know that one off the top of my head. I'd have to go to Davenport or VML Baco. I don't know that.
Okay. All right, I see project begins in October, construction begins August. Any questions from council? I have a hard, fast rule. I try to get out of here by 9. Mr. Steele, this is a good report. I appreciate that. Can I ask you a question? Can you go back a few slides to the,
There.
find out where it was. No, hang on. Go back to slide 6. You mentioned, I think I heard you say that if we decided not to do the project, but to have someone else do the project, do
The
something.
inspections, the construction inspections
Right here.
can be outsourced.
It's like a clerk of the works.
Yeah, okay.
I wouldn't recommend that, but a lot of folks are trying to keep a lot of different staff with a lot of different abilities busy when maybe there's not
we
enough.
outsourced ours. We did a clerk of the works for the PD and not internal staff as well. But that cost us $160 or something like that. Right?
Somewhere around that area, yeah. I don't know off the top of my head, but that sounds about right.
What's the difference between clerk of the work and owner's rep?
In this general type of work, clerk of the work and owner's rep. Owner's rep is I'm acting on behalf of the town of Front Royal. I do not have authorization to give the green light to spend extra money. I do not have authorization to shut the project down. I do not have authorization to give the contractor direction of any kind. I'm simply there watching, taking notes, telling them the way that you're doing this does not meet the specifications. If you keep doing that, I'm going to recommend the town not pay you for that work. But I don't have any other power than that if I'm acting as a representative.
And clerk of the work?
If that's what I think it is, a lot of VDOT projects are done that way, and when we act in that regard, we do have the authority to make those decisions. So if I see something that's not safe, I see that the OSHA regulations are not being covered, I can shut them down. If I don't have that capacity, I've got to call somebody at the town and say, I'm watching something that's not good. I'm leaving the site now because I don't want to be here when somebody's injured. I've done my part to tell you that you need to get down here and do something.
How about value engineering? What role does owner's rep versus clerk of the work have as it relates to any value engineering for the project?
Now, value engineering, it's a whole other delivery method. Value engineering would be working with the contractor to find ways to reduce costs as the project progresses.
Or prior to, during the design phase.
Correct.
And then as the project progresses.
Yeah.
I think we should, and Joe, this is probably for you and BJ, but I think we should entertain that. It's been my experience in the past that if you can have someone with expertise in a value engineering method at the beginning of the design phase and during the project, who can act as an owner's, I've used the term as owner's rep in commercial projects I've been involved in, but I found significant savings in that, so.
The only thing I would add to that, Mayor, is that the value engineering works really well in vertical projects
Yeah, I was gonna ask
that
that.
involve
I'm not
multidisciplinary
familiar with
aspects. If there's
utility
electrical,
projects.
mechanical, HVAC, structural,
Yeah,
it works really well there because there's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of opportunity for savings. In
Yeah.
a linear project,
pretty cut and dry.
pipe in the ground, you may end up paying more money
Yeah.
for the effort than the savings you get out of it. Just food for thought.
Okay. Good report. Any other questions from council? Yeah, I think this is good. So Joe, what do we need to do next as far as the RFP?
Staff's gonna go ahead and start working on an RFP. We'll get that moving, and then we'll start looking at submitting all the applications in for VRA. So basically at this point, we're not gonna be spending any money at this point, so we'll be coming back to council with some more direction on the engineering. That'll be the next point.
And I've got some budget in the existing agreement that I have with the town that I can work with BJ to look at some other funding options. So maybe there's a little menu of things to choose from when we come back. Different rates, different delivery methods, different types of options.
And I apologize for council, but what's your role again as it relates to this project? You were a consultant? You
Yes.
were hired to be a consultant to evaluate?
Correct.
Yeah, good. And your firm is, what's the name of your firm?
CHA Consulting out of Blacksburg, Virginia.
Okay. You going home tonight?
Yes, I go home every time.
All right. Safe travels. Mr. Steele, appreciate it. That was a good briefing.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate the work. Looks like it was very thorough. Mr. Walsh, do you have anything else?
No, sir, that's it.
Anyone else from council? Okay, next item on the agenda is any council discussion, any discussion items? I had one. It's not that big of a deal. I'll just tell you outside, break it for you. Just don't worry about it. No, I'm kidding.
Don't do that.
All right. I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.